Good evening, everyone. Welcome you all to the 16 Days of Action Against Gender-Based Violence webinar series organized by International Youth Alliance for Peace. And I'm Hasanki Kasturi Arachi, the moderator for today's evening. It's truly an honor to be part of this global movement to guide you through this impactful session. Let me quickly brief about IYAP. International Youth Alliance for Peace is a dynamic youth-led organization committed to promoting sustainable peace, human rights, and community empowerment. With initiatives spanning over a decade, IYAP has been instrumental in amplifying young voices and driving transformative changes across Sri Lanka and beyond. And wondering if why today? Today holds immense significance as we mark one of the 16 days of action against gender based violence, a global campaign spearheaded by the United Nations to combat the deep rooted issue of gender based violence against women and girls. First things first, let me welcome all the participants with a heartfelt welcome to all our participants joining us from across the globe. Your presence here reaffirms the importance of collective action in addressing gender-based violence. So thank you for being a part of this transformative journey. It is also my honor to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed guest for today, Ms. Pumi Watuheva. Her contributions to the fields of gender equality, human rights, and youth empowerment are truly commendable. Let me give you a more insightful about her. So Pumi is a passionate advocate for human rights, gender equality, and youth empowerment based in Colombo, Sri Lanka, and beyond. As the program's lead for Sisterhood Initiative, she has led impactful projects on gender-based violence and interfaith dialogue, uh, earning recognition in Eklan Shine 50. She has served as an advisor for the International Youth Alliance for Peace and participated in prestigious fellowships like the Lead Next Fellowship by the Asia Foundation and WCAPS Pipeline Fellowship as well. So academically, Pumi graduated as a valedictorian from the University of London, Bachelor of Laws program, and is currently training at Sri Lanka's Law College while pursuing an honors degree in development studies. With aspirations to shape Sri Lanka's public policy and future, Pumi's contribution is really impactful. Let me quickly brief the process of today's event and hand over the session to Pumi. So we'll begin with the insightful session by Pumi, and then following that, there will be a Q&A session for our Zoom audience, and we will conclude with the acknowledgements and closing remarks and a group photo session. So I must mention there will be YouTube audience also today with us. So we'll be closing the live streaming after the session. So the Q&A session, for the Q&A session, the floor will be open for Zoom participant. And until then, we'll be we will be closing the chat until then to minimize any implications, any questions, and which will be disturbing for the session. And then we'll be opening the chat after the session. So you can ask your questions. Until then, note down your questions and then you can raise after the session. So now, without further delay, it is time to hear from our esteemed guest, Ms. Pumi. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Hasanki, for the introduction and just setting the tone for what we are going to speak about. So as Hasanki mentioned, my name is Pumi. I currently work as the programs lead at Sisterhood Initiative. And as a young person who's been working in human rights for a while, I feel like again and again, especially on days like this of 16 days of activism, the need for collective action towards eliminating violence against women and girls as well as gender-based violence is becoming all the more prevalent day by day. So it's my greatest pleasure to take part in this second webinar that I am joining as an advisor for IAP. So I'm very excited for that. And let's keep the session engaging, especially for those of whom who are joining via Zoom. But feel free to reach out via IAP social media if you have any questions to me, and we can get them done as well. And I'll try my best to answer. So just to start off my session, I hope to not speak too much because I want this to hopefully be an interactive session where we can have a true conversation. So I don't think it would be a fruitful exercise for me to define what gender-based violence is and go through the types of it, like in a very technical sense, because I feel like every single person, every single woman, every single person who does not fit into the heteronormative identity of what a woman is or what a man is, they've undergone gender-based violence. And in countries like Sri Lanka, where cultures tend to be a bit more conservative rather than progressive, there is a tendency to have gender-based violence. So gender-based violence for me, again, there's no definitive definition of what gender-based violence is. Different people, different organizations define it according to different ways. But I feel like gender-based violence is behavior that's intended to hurt. And this intended to is also a very flexible term. Now, I'm a law student and I'm a to-be lawyer, so I'm very conscious about what words mean. So intent can mean I want to hurt someone because of their gender, but it can also mean things like laws that have a direct effect on hurting people because of their gender. I think intending to hurt really comes in gender-based violence rather comes very obviously in things like intimate partner violence, which is something we call IPV, which is, for example, a husband is hitting a wife in the confines of their home, or domestic violence. I'm giving very typical examples. A family-in-law, like a father-in-law or mother-in-law, hurting or hitting their daughter-in-law. It can be very physical things like hitting a woman on the street. And we've heard of ridiculous instances where women who are just walking on the street have been assaulted. But it can also mean laws or actions which indirectly hurt women. So the best example for this would be, I hope everyone is keeping in touch on what is happening in places like Afghanistan, where women are not allowed to speak in public. Women are not allowed to hear each other's voices in public. And these have been written into law. And even things like laws banning women's access to healthcare, reproductive healthcare. Even though these laws do not expressly say this law is intended to hurt women, the outcomes which these laws bring about, they hurt women. They hurt women's freedom, they hurt women's bodies, they hurt women's autonomy. So gender-based violence is something that I feel like, at least in Sri Lanka, it's something that every woman, every LGBTIQ person goes through, every trans person goes through. I won't quote statistics, but uh, if you ask 10 women if who has gone on public transport, have you been groped? Have you been assaulted? Have you been touched in unwanted places? It's going to be a yes. I might have myself. Even in the bus today, I was groped by a man. This is the reality of Sri Lankan women today. And the issue with gender-based violence, at least I feel like in Sri Lanka, is it's expressed like groping a woman, touching a woman in a bad place, sexual violence. We hear more than enough of that every day in the news. But there is almost something sinister when it comes to some kinds of gender-based violence, at least. For example, we tend to, so when two children are playing in school and let's say a little boy is like tugging on a little girl's hair, the parents or the teachers would say, oh, he just likes you, that's why he's pulling your hair. But what kind of idea does that put into the girl's head? Oh, this person is hurting me because this person likes me. Now this child would grow up and think, oh, my husband is hitting me because he loves me. It romanticizes violence. It normalizes violence. And this is a very dangerous, dangerous thing. It conditions women and it conditions people of all genders to think love equals violence or violence equals love. I am being hurt because people love me. And it conditions women to stay in abusive, bad situations. This is far from what we want to be done. Violence in any instance is not okay. And by violence, I think a lot of us think physical violence, where there is skin touching skin or something hitting someone. But like I said before, laws in Afghanistan, laws that limit sexual reproductive health, those are not things that, it's not like someone taking a bat and beating someone, right? So these kinds of unseen, unheard, untouched violence is also present. And I think something that we really need to talk about is, especially in the digital age of globalization of social media, is technology facilitated gender based violence, or we call it TFGBV or OGBV. So this is anything from someone harassing you online because you're a woman, spreading intimate photos of you online, using your face and your likeness to create AI generated content that you don't want to be created. Anything of that sort. Someone creating a fake profile of you. So, what this shows to me, at least as a young person, as someone who works in human rights, is the idea of what violence against women and what gender based violence can look like is expanding, is changing every single day. And the gender based violence that was present in our parents' age is still there. But as technology evolves, as people become more and more connected in ways that are not physical, it becomes more complex. It becomes more complicated. And it is in this context that we really have to look at what we as young people can do to address this issue and to also mobilize ourselves in a way that mitigates the factors, right? So the topic of today is mobilizing youth against violence against women and against gender-based violence. So I think if we put the youth aside, the youth aspect aside, everyone in general has a duty, has a responsibility to take steps against this. Because, and I'm going to take a wee bit of a tangent here. An excuse I often hear when people say, oh, you should prevent violence against women, like that the person you're exerting violence against can be someone's mother, someone's sister, someone's daughter. But isn't that person removing all of those roles that person has? Isn't that person human? Shouldn't that person being a human be an enough reason for you to not exert violence against them? So our perspective towards this should change to say, we don't want violence against women or gender-based violence to happen because this happens to humans. You have that, you need to humanize people because people are people at the end of the day, right? And that is a general idea. But why youth? Why are we talking about youth here? Now, we see patterns that have gone throughout the years. And we are seeing, as young people, we are seeing what technology is doing and how technology is changing in real time. Now, when I started to get on Facebook and Instagram when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, these concepts of AI generated content, these concepts of, people using your photos to make pornographic images of yourself, those are unheard of when I was starting off in social media. When I was joining Facebook when I was 13, 14, 15, and I realized now that is way too young, was people sending you nude photos of yourself. Like as a 15-year-old, I've gotten pictures of people's genitals sent to me without my consent, right? But we also see how our parents' generation had violence, gender-based violence, through romanticizing violence, like I said, through financially through financial violence, where a person would, or a authority figure like a husband or a father, would limit a person's financial ability to sort of limit them to the house, not letting them go out to public, or if they're going outside, always sending them off with a chaperone, things like that. So us as young people, we see all of the violence, kinds of violence there was, what is there now, and what is going on to happen in the future. And we are in this unique position to understand what is wrong. So we have the vantage point and we have that understanding of, or at least if we pay attention, that is, we have the understanding of what is happening. And because we understand what is happening, we can set the culture, we can set the norm, and we can set the standard, right? And this can take a lot of different ways. So it can outright be saying things like, we need to stop gender-based violence. We need to, doing the typical activist stuff, right? You go on protests, you lobby to ministers, you go to schools, you do workshops and all of that. But it really starts at the home, right? It starts with your friends. It starts with you being in university and you hear a guy or a friend saying something untowardly towards a woman, like catcalling someone who's just walking towards the street, and just going to that dude and saying, hey, that's not cool, man. Let's not do that. It's as simple as that. But it can be it can go further than that as well, right? So I'll share some examples later on as we go on, but it really starts at the home, and it doesn't have to be elaborate, and it can look like preventing someone from getting hit in the first place, but it can also putting slight ideas into your grandparents and parents' mind, saying maybe that's not okay, maybe you shouldn't limit a woman's mobility to go outside and partake in society and have a job and get educated. It's preventing locker room talk within your friends. It can also, like I said, be a direct approach. You go into the protest and you do all of that. But when you look at examples like, if I say you not to do something, it's very unlikely that you would not do it. Because, for example, I'm a very rebellious person, and things like gender-based violence, because they're so entrenched into our culture and our society, just because you tell someone to not hit people, they won't stop, right? Gender-based violence, we have to see in this context, is something that is structural. It's something that's cultural. So the only way to take something that's so structurally and culturally entrenched is to uproot those root causes. What are the root causes of gender-based violence? They are drugs, alcohol, poverty, patriarchal norms. There's a whole host of others, but we as young people can take issues into hand and work on these issues also. So for example, if you do a project through your university's Rotary Club against drug abuse, against alcohol abuse, and if you do a gender sensitization workshop in university, in a workplace, or just slip those into casual conversation with your parents, which I have been known to do, it will also make a difference because you're uprooting those root causes, right? So I'll make a stop there, and I'll explain about some examples as we go on. But do you have any initial questions for me, Hasanki, from based on what I said?
Yes, I actually it hit me where when you said, shouldn't you think being a human only that you should act against gender-based violence? Yes, I actually agree that. And I would like to ask, now you have mentioned about cultures and behavior. It sometimes can be culture and behavior also can define what gender-based violence is in different perspectives. So, what do you have to say about that with an example? How do you see it, like with a behavior and any aspect in culture that defines gender-based violence in a different way?
Right. So a cultural thing that I have seen a lot in my life and in the family background and in the community that I come from, and also the communities that I work with. So I work with, you know, young women particularly, mostly with young women, and I see a lot where uh, parents or communities, they tend to shield young women a lot. And I am not saying that young women shouldn't be shielded. The world is a very scary place, understandably so. We hear horror stories happening to women every single day. And I understand that it's very hard to let children be children, let children grow as well. But if your protection towards a woman or a young woman goes to the extent of limiting her ability to be her best self, that is going to, in my opinion, amount to a type of violence. So, for example, if a young woman wants to pursue her higher education and her parents are saying, no, you have to get married. You have to get married. You can't do anything. And they say, oh, you can get married and do all of those things. And then the woman gets married, nothing happens. So we tend to think of violence as a very in your face, bruises and black eyes and blood and broken teeth, right? But it's small things like that. Small thing, it's not even small because you're limiting a woman's education. It's limiting a woman's ability to do what she wants. It's hurting her ability to gain freedom and independence. Some women, so this is what I see as violence, right? But some person might just see that as, a woman or other family just taking care or thinking of the best of what the child wants to do. And behavior, I think behavior and culture both go into that. And this gets more complicated because we don't see parents as people who would want to hurt us, because I see my parents as people who want to protect me, who care about me. And it can be a lot. So that's why I said violence, the perception of violence is also quite complicated. And you can see this especially in our legal system, especially in divorce, right? You need to show the bruises, you need to show the broken teeth to get violence on based of domestic violence, to get divorce based on domestic violence. But you can't, it's very difficult to get a divorce from someone just because they don't let you go outside, they don't let you pursue your education, they don't let you get a job. So it's small things like that.
Yes, Pim, thank you so much.
So I think I'll explain a bit more about what youth can do, right? So like I said, you can go the direct approach, you can protest, you can talk to people, you can do workshops and all of that. And but you can get creative with it, no? I think young people are known for their innovation and things like that. So I'm going to show one particular example of something that was done by the Zonta Club of Colombo, I believe. Hasaki, can you confirm that you can see this?
Yes, Pim, it's visible.
Okay, brilliant. So this was done by the Zonta Club of Colombo, and this says end violence against women. And I feel like this is a beautiful, beautiful representation of what young people can do in a creative way. So this is I've seen this mural, it's in Slave Island. It's beautiful and it's very straightforward, right? You know, if you pass this mural every single day on your way to work, it sends a message. it sends, it portrays the woman as powerful. It's very in your face, and I like that. But like I mentioned, sometimes it's a bit, the manifestations of violence against women can come in indirect ways, like I said, drug abuse, patriarchal abuse, like patriarchal norms, things like that. And that is where I feel like murals like this or works like this can be particularly powerful. Can you see the new one I'm sharing, Hasanki? Can you confirm that for
Yes,
me?
clearly visible.
Okay, brilliant. So this is a mural that my organization, Sisterhood Initiative, did in Slave Island. This is on the what do we call it? The Salvation Army building very near Slave Island. And when you look at this, you would not really think that this is about violence against women. And I don't think we really thought about it meaning violence against women either, right? The wording that's there, it says our roots entwine, we are divine. And the message is about women empowerment. But I think you might remember I mentioned before that violence is very normalized and romanticized. And one of the key factors that might contribute to women being susceptible to or um, uh, being complacent in the face of violence is that feeling of isolation, that feeling of I don't have any power, I can't do anything for myself. So I am going to, you know, සිංහලෙන් කියනවා නම් කට්ට කාගෙන ඉන්නවා කොහොම හරි. But if you tell women you are powerful, you can take action, you can lead these situations without even, you know, you don't need financial resources, and those definitely help, I'm not going to lie. But even giving that courage, that confidence to a woman, that is a very, very powerful thing, especially to women who've always been told indirectly and directly that you can't do anything without someone else, without a man, without a father, without a husband. These kinds of murals that emphasize on the power of women can be very powerful. And this is addressing one of those factors that I mentioned, the patriarchal norms kind of thing. And patriarchal norms can be a host of different things, like combating patriarchal norms can be in the form of doing like a gender sensitization workshop. Like, it doesn't have to be like you go into a community and say, hey, this is gender, this is cis, this is LGBTIQ, this is the difference between the two. It's not that. It can be even things like, I've seen things like saying what, like going to a community and doing, okay, what do you think a good man is? What do you think a good woman is? And oftentimes the idea of what a good man would be like, he's strong, he's assertive, like words like very masculine, macho man. But the woman's good woman words would be complacent, quiet, silent, nice, kind. And you sort of show those biases, and those things kind of get your gears turning, right? And even though those won't directly convert into violence going down, it would show people, okay, there is an idea that I can't be strong. So why can't I be strong as a woman? Why can't I be assertive as a woman? So those kind of indirect ways of empowering women and also making men understand, and potential perpetrators of violence understand that their need to be macho and strong and everything doesn't need to be that way, and they can actually resolve things through conversation. It also contributes to minimizing violence against women and gender-based violence, I believe. And I'll tie this back into why youth can do this more, is because we are connected. We are incredibly connected in today's world. We can use the power of social media every single day. We can use the clubs and societies we have in university. My goodness, how many Rotaract clubs does the University of Colombo have? Hasanki might know. Like every faculty has, and it's actually a good thing, because this means that young people are so connected. These university clubs are amazing ways to go into communities, to do things in your own university, right? And like think places like Toastmasters Club, Rotaract clubs, Leo clubs, these are these are ideal places to do these kinds of things. And I understand that a lot of the projects that happen through these kind of initiatives can come from the idea of, oh, we need to do something, we need to do some project, we need to, you know, do a project this year, so let's just do something on drug abuse or drug use day නවා. So එදාට අපි මොකක් හරි ඒදාට අල්ලලා මොකක් හරි project එකක් කරමු. But when you understand these nuances and understand really like intimately, really go to the real crux of it, you doing a drug abuse prevention program can help a woman's life, can help a woman's life. Just think about that the next time you do a project and really care about it, because young people are very uniquely placed to address this issue. So if you take anything away from today's session, it would be to always remember that community mobilization is the most powerful thing you can do, right? There are going to be people like, Malala and Greta, very powerful individual voices. But Greta can mobilize people, Malala can mobilize people, but we can also mobilize ourselves. It just takes you and a friend, or just you as yourself. But young people as a community, we can do so much more. And if we do spotlight a certain issue, we should take this as one of our priorities. And don't limit VAWG, or Violence Against Women and Girls Conversations, to 16 days, right? I don't want to see another prevention of VAWG webinar on 16 days of activism just because it's a hot topic. This should be a 365-day, 24-hour conversation that happens in all our communities all the time. And let's make a collective effort to stop this permanently.
Thank you, Pumi. Actually, it was really eye-opening, I should say. And when you were mentioning about like culture and behavior and how patriarchy or the marriage, like patriarchy in the sense from father's side when she was a kid, or when she's married as a wife from her husband, she is being limited in many of ways. So you have mentioned that like shielding a woman would affect her in how she would be becoming in the future. Like what if she is told to not to learn any more further after A levels? No, university is not suitable for you. So obviously she'll be turning out to a different person than she was thinking she might be. So, would you think this patriarchy, that now you have mentioned that patriarchy is sometimes good because a daughter should be, protected by a father, right? Like sometimes in another way, patriarchy in a protective way from the father or the husband, we have seen a lot of things happening to women. Okay, they might be thinking, okay, we are doing in order to protect them, but sometimes it's actually not. So in what point do you think that they should understand the line, the border of that protecting and overpowering? What's the border in your point of view?
I think I'll make a very quick clarification and say, as a feminist, I don't think that patriarchy is good at all. Like, I think this idea of wanting to shield girls more than shielding boys comes from a very botched idea about, we should protect girls and let boys go. Because I have a brother, and when I was growing up, I felt like he had way more freedom than me to do whatever he wanted. Patriarchy across the board in any situation is not a good thing. Just wanted to put that out there and make that clarification, right? But parents have a duty, responsibility, and hopefully a want to take care of their children, regardless of gender, right? And I think as you grow older, as you approach, age where you reach higher studies, it becomes the line, I feel like, is very different for everyone, right? Mm, because things like higher education, it can really depend on even things like financial, right? So for example, I might want to do, if I was still doing my A-levels, I would say, okay, I didn't get chosen to local university, I want to go to a private university, and my parents refuse to do that simply because we don't have the funds. So it it's a bit difficult to say what the line is, but in general, if the factor that you're trying to limit is something that would help the woman or the girl gain independence and live an independent life and be able to survive and live, I think that would be, and live happily, right? So for example, if a woman is being forcefully married, sure, she would be financially secure through her husband, but it's through her husband, not on her own, not on her own accord. I feel like that would be a safe line to draw. It's really it depends, and it differs from people to people, from situation to situation. You have to look at it intersectionally too, right? That's a word I like to use a lot as a feminist. You have to look at all of the conditions. What's the economic situation like? What's the family situation like? Um what are the cultural norms that hold a woman back, or the cultural norms that say that sort of force the parent to push the child in another direction? What are the access to resources that you have? For example, if you are a young woman in a rural area and you say, I want to go to a private uni, and you have the funds to do so, but you're so far away and your parents don't like you going that far, and you also understand that it might be a bit too far to go. So the line there might be vastly different from someone who lives in Colombo and has like a, you know, private university happy, they have the funds to do so and can go, but parents aren't letting. So it's like, it's very different from situation to situation. But I hope I answered your question. I know it's not a straightforward answer, but I hope that gives you a bit more clarity.
Yes, yes, it is. And I would, when you answer in that question, so I would be thinking, what if, like, so what do you think? Like, now we are discussing on this topic. This is kind of, as you mentioned, this is kind of on a, I mean, like, let's say, let's use the word trending, kind of like we are vastly discussing on this topic. So would you think only through discussing can this generation, the generation we are talking about, so can, or would they would do what we want? Like now we want to, like, okay, we want the younger people to act against GBV. So would you
Mm.
think after discussing only, or letting them know, okay, now this is this, don't do this, and we are showing with, like, as the club Zonta club shows, like an image wise or anything, would you think even if they have seen it 24 hours, would you think there would be a slight change, or a slight, I mean, like, increasement of what we need?
Mm-mm. I understand what you're saying. I think more than anything, we as young activists, we as people who engage with communities, we first of all need to practice what we preach. We need to embody these values that we are trying to bring about, right? So if, say, we are talking about GBV and preventing it in the streets, and then going on online and bashing women in the streets, that would not be right. That would not be right at all. And the thing with, seeing something like a mural or having conversations online, and changing those kind of very societally inherent and entrenched societal norms it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time and concerted effort, and it takes a lot of time for the law to catch up to what we want it to do as well, right? So for example, humankind has been living for 10,000 years. Women could only vote, own a credit card, own property, go into the workforce in the last 100 years. So how, and women's rights movements have been going on this for the same amount of time. And every single day we are trying to understand what women's rights are, what feminism is, what gender equality means, and it changes. Because for example, the concept, things like the concept of care work. How do we acknowledge the work that women do every single day in their households? And, things like that, even making people understand those things, making people understand the mental, physical load of taking care of people at the home and the importance of it and needing to acknowledge it in economics. Like, even things like that, those things take a long, long time. Societal perspectives change takes a long, long time. And even in Sri Lanka, let's keep aside GBV, we talked about a system change in 2021, 2022, but it took 2 years, and I don't think it still happens yet, but it's ongoing. That system changes in any situation doesn't happen in a day. It requires concerted, continuous effort from us as young people. And because we are young, I'm going to stereotype here, we have the energy to do continuous effort. We have the time, the energy, the want, the need, the determination to do it. So talking about it is definitely not enough. We need to not also work in silos. That means we shouldn't work in isolation. So for example, if the Rotary Club of Colombo is doing something regarding drug use in some area, you talk to another Rotary Club somewhere else to see what they are doing, what has worked, what has not, because we have to keep learning from each other. It's a learning process, right? Learning process of, okay, how do we systematically address this situation? Because this is a societal problem. You can't do one project and expect drug abuse and GBV to go away in a day. And it doesn't, and Rotary clubs and Isaac clubs are not everywhere. So how do we reach out to the young people who are not in those formal clubs, but are still doing important work in the communities back home in the rural villages, So how do we amplify the impact? We do our work, we make sure that, our communities are safe, are doing good. But if it's a societal issue, we need to think about the big picture as well. So I hope I answered your question, but talking is definitely not enough. Doing the work is definitely necessary.
Yes, thank you so much, Vimy. Actually, that was really insightful. And I think I learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience as well. So now we are going to open the chat box for the audience that we have right now in Zoom. So before that, I would like to thank the audience joining through YouTube. Thank you so much for your participation. We value you a lot, and we want to continue and amplify these voices and advocate for meaningful changes. And now we'll be closing the live streaming to YouTube.